A very warm and pleasant good evening, fellow St. Lucians, at home and abroad. A happy new year to you all. It is my prayer as a leader of the opposition and of the United Workers' Party that this year, 2023, will bring you good health, peace, happiness, and prosperity, even amid the challenges that continue to confront us on many different levels. I wish to convey a special greetings to my constituents of Micoud South, who continue to support my family and I. Let me assure you of my continued commitment in our quest for a better community and an improved way of life going forward. I have chosen to address you tonight at this critical juncture to apprise you of the state of our country from my vantage point and to enlist your support to help turn back the many areas of concern that now threaten to take us backwards from whence we came. After listening to the Prime Minister's address, we can all agree that we cannot look to Philip J. Pierre or his administration to inspire hope and confidence in our people or to provide the kind of leadership that our country needs at this time. As with each passing day of this administration in office, our country looms closer to crisis. The Prime Minister in his address continued to show that he's out of his depth by his failure to recognize the impending threats that are beginning to emerge in the global economy and the need for him and his government to begin to devise local strategies to confront them. 2023 is predicted to be even more difficult than last year. And the consensus in the international community is that there will be another global economic recession. No one now knows how long it will last or how deep it will be. But we thought the Prime Minister would have been aware of this impending development and would at the very least begin to alert St. Lucians to its implications. We cannot continue to hide our head in the sand, but must confront the reality that faces us with a frank and honest conversation about our country and where it is heading. The good news is that we will not be needing any bazooka to fight this fight. The arms that we will need in this battle are basically innovativeness, insightfulness, and a visionary leadership from a government to undertake the business of the country. A government that is not consumed by protecting the victory, but by a genuine desire to lift the hopes and the spirits of you, the citizens of St. Lucia. As the saying goes, if you are standing still, you are moving backwards. That's why we see countries continuing to forge ahead with plans to build on what they already have, because there's a recognition that even in the times of crisis, the process of pursuing development has to be an ongoing exercise. This is what the last government that I had the honor to lead was able to do. It does not take a crystal ball or a magician to see that in the last year under the St. Lucia Labour Party government, we've slid backwards on many fronts. We must therefore ask ourselves, why is it that every time we elect a Labour Party government, our country and people have to go through this agony of the Ds? Despair, desperation, and disillusionment. Despite all the bravado and the loud noises that continue to come from their ranks, giving the impression that they have the answers, the Labour Party has left us no legacy or footprints of economic success in any section of our national endeavor in their 4 attempts at governance since independence. They've set us backwards each occasion. This is the short history of the party that currently governs us. They simply have never been up to the task of balancing livelihoods and economic development. The last time they demitted office in 2016, they left us with the highest rate of unemployment ever, 25%. They left us with 3 consecutive years of economic decline, or to put it bluntly, negative economic growth. Our debt level was at its highest ever, and all sectors and institutions in our country were in decline or total disarray. The dismal showing by the Labour Party came at a time when we had no major disaster, global pandemic, or economic crisis. Imagine. So even in the best of times, Labour could not manage this country. When my party came into office in mid-2016, we promptly implemented 5 promises that we had made to you, including a reduction of the VAT by 25% to reduce the economic squeeze that we knew we were feeling. We wiped out all the outstanding debts to the hospitals to allow you to access the medical care. We did not forget our children. We increased the bus subsidy and expanded the school feeding program. We told you we would need 3 years to turn things around, and by the ending of 2019, we did. My party demonstrated the vision and forward thinking that has become known for. We promised to create a new St. Lucia because the way we saw it, St. Lucia that we inherited was badly broken. We were well into our stride when COVID pandemic hit. But again, under our leadership, St. Lucia was able to brave the effects of the threat with minimum of disruptions. By the time we left office in July of 2021, we'd reduced unemployment to 16.8% and recorded 12.5% growth in our country. Government revenues had also returned to its pre-2019 levels, the only country in the Caribbean to do that. The next best performance to St. Lucia in terms of economic growth was Dominica with 5.8%. We attracted investment and we crafted a vision for the development of Vieux Fort, which had deteriorated physically, economically, socially under Labour. Today, after 18 months of SLP rule, St. Lucia finds itself in the doldrums again. You, the people, gave this government a mandate to go to Parliament and work for you, to make our lives better. Instead, projects left behind which would have positive economic and social impact on the country have been halted and remain that way after 18 months. Let it be known that these vindictive attempts at crippling certain local businesses impacts thousands of families across the political divide who are suffering due to the victimization. And this must stop now. Inflation is crippling low and middle income families, and there's inadequate response from the government. Our fuel prices remain among the highest in the region, even while world prices are falling. Can you imagine that when the price of oil on the world market was US $120 a barrel, we in St. Lucia paid EC $13.85 a gallon. Today, at just over US $70 a barrel, we're paying a staggering $17 a gallon. Imagine, this is a government that continues to rip you off at the expense of making revenue to create jobs for their friends, families, and their Labour Party comrades. When will this administration keep their promise to put you first? The Prime Minister fails to understand that we're an export-led country, and he's allowed all the increases in the prices of goods to be passed on to the productive sector and to all the households, including the low-income households. To further exasperate the situation, a company like Lucia, which has a guaranteed profit, is passing on the increased costs to you, the consumers. All of us have to pay higher electricity bills to ensure that Lucia makes its profit, in spite of the current economic crisis facing our country. I ask you, how is that putting you first? The high cost of electricity and fuel also contribute to the high prices of goods on the supermarket shelf. If the Prime Minister really cared, if he really understood, he would have reduced the price of fuel and reduced the rate of import duties to ensure that the wholesalers and distributors pass on the reduced costs to you. That is why a caring and understanding United Workers' Party would have done. As a result of stopping all the major projects, this government has increased the level of unemployment, especially among the young men in our country. People who worked under the St. Jude's project and the Honore International Airport project, and even the many road reconstruction projects, have found themselves on the breadline. It's now almost impossible for them to feed their families and send their children to school, or even to pay their water and electricity bills. Does the Prime Minister really understand that these decisions also affect the truck operators and heavy equipment owners, who many of them are small, independent owners and are not big companies? Does he understand that these revenues were supplementing household incomes? And I ask you again, is he putting you first? A caring and understanding United Workers' Party government would have continued these projects and continued the practice to ensure that the contractors hired as many residents in the various communities as possible. But this government continues to be completely clueless and cannot generate any new ideas to help the situation. Their incompetence can now be appropriately classified as criminal. The Labour Party criticizes for spending an unprecedented $500 million on road rehabilitation by saying, and we remember this, people don't eat roads. But today remains mute on the issue. That figure, sadly, only represented repairs to 1/3 of our road network. And in addition, we were spending $30 million a year for basic road maintenance. We're no longer in the rainy season, as was indicated by the Minister King. Today, we find ourselves with the worst road network in the modern history of St. Lucia. When we left office, we had signed and negotiated a package of over $100 million for road rehabilitation. Again, because of their victimization, they stopped all the road projects and canceled all the contracts and negotiated, but yet still they continue to collect the gas tax that we initiated to go into a lockbox towards road rehabilitation. This is criminal. The fact that Labour has not been able to make a definitive action plan for Honore International Airport and St. Jude Hospital and has no plans for the South speaks to the very core of what is wrong with this government. All they can say about Honore after 18 months in office is that work will recommence later this year. We urge you to ask them for yourself, what is their vision for St. Lucia? My constituents continue to ask me, what is the Prime Minister's vision for the South? But alas, they have no vision for the South and no vision for St. Lucia. They're simply operating in protecting the victory. And the reality is that this survival mode is destroying our country economically, socially, and culturally. One of the more sordid deeds of the Labour parties in the last year was its decision to enter into an agreement with a foreign entity for control of 2 of our ports in Castries and Soufrière for 30 years, with an option for renewal for a further 10 years, and all for an investment of $47 million. Unbelievable yet absolutely true and unfortunate. $47 million to be paid back in 40 years. So for the next 40 years, we'll have no control of our ports. We'll have no say in what happens. We'll have no control of the millions of dollars that the cruise sector will bring into this country. I ask you, is this putting you first? Let me give you an idea of how utterly ridiculous this proposal is. At the moment, St. Lucia earns a tax rate of $6.50 per cruise ship passenger. We recorded 1 million passengers in 2019. We know that we can get an additional minimum of $5 per passenger because the cruise industry has collectively agreed to increase the head tax. This calculates to $11.5 million a year in revenue for 30 years, or about $345 million to get an investment of $47 million. Is this the craziest thing one could ever hear? And it begs, is someone personally benefiting from this lopsided deal? Why on earth do we need a middleman in running our ports and collecting this kind of money when SLASPA and Invest St. Lucia can do the same for us? With this deal, the government is giving up all current and future revenue at our ports for the next 30 to 40 years. Approximately $345 million to be given away, and you got it, $47 million of investment. I call on every influential business and national organizations in our country to find the courage to call out this massive sellout of our patrimony. Additionally, we demand that the Prime Minister make public the MOU for this agreement so that every right-thinking St. Lucian can have a say in what happens to our ports. Remember, this was the stance that they had in opposition. Remember, transparency. We demand that they now provide that transparency. The arrangements being made for Unora International Airport will also result in the control of our airport falling into foreign hands. Can you believe this? All of our major ports, vital national assets that the St. Lucians have successfully managed for several decades, are now being sold or leased to foreign entities, right under our noses. This Prime Minister has the gall to suggest to us that no decision has been taken to sell our ports. We suggest to him that leasing them for 30 or 40 years is as bad as selling them outright. Amazingly, one of the conditions attached to the ports deal is that while it is in effect, there should be no development undertaken in Vieux Fort Port. Can you believe that elected members of the St. Lucia Labour Party, including one who served as the Prime Minister of this country and has represented Vieux Fort for 25 years, has stayed silent? It means that for the next 40 years, no development can take place in the south of St. Lucia. Truthfully, my heart is crying out for the people in the south. Where are the self-proclaimed patriots who should be standing up for Vieux Fort? Don't they care about the fact that the South is being further cut out of the economic development of our country? St. Lucians, we must stand up to this government. If Kenny, Musa, and Alva will not stand up for the people in the South, I will. Bradley will. And all of us must. The South deserves better. All St. Lucians deserve better. The St. Jude's Hospital is the best example we have to date on what protecting the victory means. The public is interested in the answers to the following 4 questions. When is the construction going to start? How long will it take to complete? How much will it cost? And what type of hospital will we be getting? When we came into office in 2016, the Shantic King and FDL report confirmed that we spent $118 million on the old building, consisting of over 26 structures, and that it would cost approximately $90 million to complete it. However, that number did not consider the many deficiencies to the electrical, plumbing, sewage, gas, design flaw, and layout of the facility. To date, no costing has been done to solve those issues that needed to be completed before we continue with the project. Given that this was an old structure, and we could not answer these questions until we begin reconstruction. However, a critical question remains that due to the layout of the structures and the deficiencies, would we ever get planning approval to use this as a functioning hospital? After consulting and visiting with Cayman Health City, my government agreed that it would be more time and cost efficient to build a modern new structure to meet the expanding health needs of the South and St. Lucia. This structure is 20% bigger than the OKEU that cost $270 million and would allow the hospital services to be in one space, just like OKEU. We can confirm that we spent $118 million on this new structure. The government is therefore confronted with 2 options. And remember, when I came into government and we were confronted with St. Jude's, we had to make a decision as to whether we were going to build and complete the old structure or whether we were going to build a new structure. This government only has 2 options. The old building, which is estimated at $100 million pre-COVID, and inflation prices to complete, plus the cost of repairing the deficiencies mentioned above on a building that has been dormant for over 10 years. The second option is 2-phased approach on the modern structure. A 90-bedded facility on the ground floor and with all the facilities in one space. And that would cost about $50 million and would take about 6 months to complete. And there would be no doubts as to whether you can get planning approval. The second phase would allow for the expansion of other floors with the option to change the use of the old facility into a medical university. It's interesting that a government who went in opposition said that all it would take to move in is some chemical and paint. To date, 18 months later, cannot come up with a viable plan to move from the stadium. This is a government who had a report for over 14 months and still has no answers for the critical questions that must be answered. I ask you, is this putting you first? A caring and understanding United Workers' Party government would have had you out of the stadium and into a brand new modern medical facility by now. This government always spoke about transparency and accountability. And as usual, everything they promise, they do the opposite. So we had no report on the Citizenship by Investment program and how its money is being spent. We have no update on the government revenues. The new Finance Act requires that they give regular updates on what is happening with the country. But we've had none. Not one report. No numbers of unemployment, cost of living, economic growth, nothing. They've kept this country in the dark. How many of our people know that over the Christmas period, this government announced to the world that they were reducing the CIP from $300,000 to $200,000? Did they tell us of the change to the citizenship program where they removed the suspension from Iranian nationals to apply for citizenship, among other changes? These are the very same people who once said that we should not cheapen the CIP program. This is yet another example of Labour Party hypocrisy. Do as I say, not as I do. Let's remember that this is a Labour Party whose motto is bread, freedom, and justice. Yet we've seen the price of bread become unattainable. Whilst this government is promising to spend another $3 million on a linguist witch hunt, yet they could not subsidize flour for $600,000 to ensure that you St. Lucians would not pay more for bread. I ask you, does that sound like a government that's putting you first? A caring and understanding United Workers' Party government would continue to subsidize the price of flour no matter what to ensure that the low-income families could provide a basic necessity as bread on their table. The fact is that St. Lucia Labour Party is a failed party, and under its current leadership, St. Lucia will soon become a failed state, both internally and internationally. If this is left unabated, it'll have a significant impact on our freedoms at home. We see crime out of control. Why? I think because we have criminals trying to lead criminals. How many more innocent St. Lucians have to lose their lives before the Prime Minister steps in? This is further proof that the Prime Minister is clueless. Because instead of trying to solve the problem, he prefers to make excuses and continues to make protecting the victory his priority. If you are a comrade, and if you have a criminal past, you get a pass at the expense of the rest of us. However, this level of hypocrisy is creating chaos and undermining the freedoms that we all enjoy. Justice is being undermined at the highest level. And all this leads to the doubts as to whether we can keep our democracy and be free in our own country. We continue to see the appointment of known Labour Party operatives to critical positions such as the judicial and legal services and the Electoral Commission. How will these decisions provide any comfort that justice will be fair and impartial in this country? My fellow St. Lucians, we're now in the process of ascending to the CCJ. And such political appointments gives no assurances that there'll be no political interference in the court. Any caring government who values the opinion of its people would ensure that they consult first with the people and give them the opportunity to vote on such an important constitutional change via referendum and not hide behind a constitutional technicality or error. Clearly, we can see that the government does not trust the judgment of St. Lucians to guide the decisions for the justice in this country, nor value the necessity of an independent justice system. The Prime Minister is himself a walking contradiction. With a straight face, reminds us that under the separation of powers principle, the government cannot be seen to be interfering in the work of the independent judicial branch of the government. He says that public figures cannot be perceived as aiders and abettors of crime, and emphasizes that he was referring to members of parliament as well as other public servants. He says that they must always be seen to be exemplary conduct in their private and professional lives. Is that really the Prime Minister uttering those words? A Prime Minister who is at this very moment continues to shelter criminals and other wrongdoers in his own cabinet. This is not the same Prime Minister who planted himself in a magistrate's court along with the Speaker of the House, according to him, to ensure that justice was being done in the case involving one of his ministers. And remember, this minister clearly flouted several official regulations, both at home and at the St. Lucia High Commission in London. Our Prime Minister proceeded to reward his misdeeds by choosing him as his deputy. Some weeks ago, amid growing public concern about crime in the country, especially the alarming increase in homicides, we offered the government a number of tangible suggestions for consideration in the spirit of bipartisanship and an effort to contribute to the bringing crime under control. To our utter amazement, but no surprise, the Prime Minister unceremoniously threw out all the ideas into the garbage and claimed that they contained nothing new. The truth, however, is there were, in fact, new suggestions in our recommendations. There were also requests that the government reinstate some of the crime-fighting strategies it had done away with since coming into office, which had contributed to keeping crime under control. So where exactly do we stand in St. Lucia in 2023? If we get any deeper into the woes, it is going to take a miracle, a tremendous amount of pain to solve these issues. Our economy is now in danger. Since the promise some months ago by the Prime Minister of an 8% growth in 2022, he has downgraded that forecast to between 5 and 7%. I'm sounding this alarm not to cause fear and panic, but rather to alert St. Lucians to the stark possibilities that face us. This government is closing the door on any opportunity for us to turn this country around. They have demonized foreign investment in tourism, destroyed agriculture, and now the economic future of St. Lucia is bleak at best. The best news the Prime Minister had for us in agriculture was unspecified increases in sea moss, honey, vegetable, and fruit production. The banana industry, the mainstay, has crashed under the weight of the government's incompetence, leaving hundreds of banana farmers in places like Dennery, Micoud, Roseau, and Babonneau, and elsewhere, broken and despondent. Clearly, the Prime Minister does not understand the impact that the loss of income will have on the most vulnerable households in St. Lucia. I ask you, is that putting people first? Tourism, construction, manufacturing, and agriculture are all the main pillars of the St. Lucian economy. In his address last Sunday, the Prime Minister announced what he called record growth in tourism arrivals from only two markets, the USA and the UK. But he gave us no figures in support of his claim. Nor did he or the minister alert us to the fact that the number of flights from those destinations, US and the UK, have been drastically reduced. The former Minister of Tourism will have more to say on this at a later time. Investors who were showing a high level of interest in St. Lucia, the Prime Minister said, but the only new investments that he could identify were the Sandals and Sabocha hotel projects, both left over from the United Workers' Party government. We know that the construction sector has taken a hit from the many projects that were stopped and from its attitude. It is clear that the government couldn't care less about the hardship that you, the people, are enduring as a result of its immature and vindictive policies. The decisions on the Rodney Bay Road showed great insight in this government's thinking. A road package that included 4 lanes, pedestrian overpass, sidewalks, and 2 roundabouts was negotiated at a fixed contract for $15 million. The Labour Party in opposition claims that this was extortion. They have now come into office, stopped the project, and will now have to pay an estimated value of $20 million worth of works and still find a new contractor to complete the project. Remember, this was a fixed contract for $15 million. Meanwhile, our citizens and visitors have had to suffer the worst road conditions and inconveniences. That is the level of incompetence and political victimization that the taxpayers of this country have to pay for. Finally, the Prime Minister had no news about the performance of the manufacturing sector. Not a single word. From statements of the Prime Minister himself, the economic prospects for St. Lucia in 2023, therefore, cannot be described as encouraging. I believe there are, sadly, some dark days approaching, and given the ineptitude and dishonesty of this government, we may need a miracle to pull us through. The time will come when we, the People's Parliament, will have to convey a vote of no confidence in this government. I want to urge all St. Lucians, keep hope alive, to remain focused and strong as we confront the reality of this grim situation. I have never lost confidence in the ability of you, the people of St. Lucia, to rally together and turn things around in times of difficulty. I know we'll be able to do it again. Finally, I want to reassure every St. Lucian the United Workers' Party is alive and well. It's no secret that since the election, we've been going through a lot of discourse. This is part of the democratic process that our opponents cannot speak of. It is our intention to have our overdue convention very soon in this new year, which will no doubt bring a new executive with fresh and energized leadership, with the talent to allow the party to continue the mission that was started in 1964 and led by Sir John Compton and his team. I was elected in 2016 with a team to continue building towards a better St. Lucia. We were criticized by the Labour Party for spending $10 million a year to improve our schools, for strengthening our healthcare systems, for improving our sporting facilities, for bringing investment into the country, for repairing our infrastructure while still being able to balance our finances. In hindsight, hopefully many more of you now know that United Workers' Party has always had a vision and a proven track record to lead this country. The new leadership will be equally committed and capable of continuing the journey. Be assured. May God continue to protect our country. May God continue to bless you and bless your community and your families, and to bless and guide all of us, especially the more vulnerable among us. I thank you, and good night.